What's the rarest thing that happened to you? When I was a teenager, I picked up a hitchhiker, and then a few years later the same guy picked me up when I was walking after I ran out of gas. I never saw him before or after those two occasions. Many years ago, I had a terrible day where my girlfriend broke up with me. I did terribly in a college final exam, I lost my wallet, and finally, as I was doing the sad walk back home, some random branch broke off a tree as I was walking on the sidewalk. The whole big thing fell on top of me and hit me square across the shoulder and knocked me to the ground. I just burst out laughing because the scene was so ridiculous. I was almost murdered in a case of mistaken identity. A guy came chasing after my car on the highway, waving his gun out the window. He eventually got in front of me, blocking my car, and stopped his car and got out. He came right up to my window, pointed the gun right at my head, looked me in the eyes and said, "Sorry, wrong person," then got back in his car and drove away. I still have no idea who he was or who the right person was. I hope he got caught. I got attacked by a robin in the morning, then attacked by a hawk 3 hours later. It was a weird day. I guess I'm never trying that worm-scented body wash again. What happened to the smartest kid in your class? He's in jail for murder. That came as a surprise. In school, he was super friendly and helpful to all the other students in class. I read he killed his business partner execution style and that he was connected to a bunch of fraud and embezzlement. He went to a good technical school, works for Apple, and has a very expensive home in California. He has a wife and 4 kids and seems to be very happy. I remember he was programming games in high school. A big nerd who became a wealthy big nerd. He got a full scholarship to Harvard, did an internship his first summer at Intel, and was killed by a drunk driver a few weeks after arriving in California. I couldn't believe it when it happened 25 years ago, and still can't really. He ended up dying when an avalanche pushed him off a cliff during a backpacking trip in Europe. I learned about it even before his family because of friends on the trip. Rest in peace, Henry. I can't pass a football without thinking about you. I once learned from a parent who lost a child that the only thing we have is memories, and knowing they live on in others is a great joy. I've messaged his mom sometimes to tell her I still think about him, and she seems to really appreciate it. What is perfectly legal, but very creepy? I once had a client drink another person's unflushed pee from a public toilet. The judge clearly hated that he had to dismiss my client's case. Same goes for sniffing a seat that someone was sitting in. Nasty. People fighting like mad to get the dog in the divorce, and then turning it over to a shelter out of spite. They are finally passing law changes about pets and divorce where I live, so there will soon be serious consequences for that. Exploiting your kids for fame on social media. I've seen the parents coaching the kids and accidentally uploaded the unedited video. There was that mom who kept telling her son to cry harder and look more sad because his dog died. He yelled at her, "I am sad." Disgusting. There was also that anorexic girl who had her mother enabling her instead of supporting her to seek treatment. Obviously, it becomes not legal if it can be considered abuse. Why did that one kid get expelled? Running through the cafeteria at lunch, naked, with a backpack on that he set on fire. Of all the ways to go, that was pretty legendary. He caught a squirrel, it bit him, so he hit it against a tree. He was then expelled after they found a detailed map of the school with locations where he wanted to place bombs and students he was planning to kill and how. Just a real good guy. He planned a food fight that turned into a riot with property damage and then fled the police. The school was locked down for the whole afternoon, kids frantic on cell phones with their parents because they had no clue why this was happening. A long list of threatening behaviors. He was a foster kid with every kind of past abuse. He told me he was going to shoot himself and then come shoot me. I refrained from pointing out his lapse in logic. What's the most interesting revelation you've had about the opposite sex? A guy's balls move all on their own, like the skin flexes, and can crawls up and down twitching. I read about it and thought it was nonsense, but I have a husband I could inspect, and was very surprised. I'm not young either, I never knew. It's a big deal if you put her favorite bra in the dryer, even accidentally. I was in a rush and put 4 of her bras in the dryer on high. I apologized profusely and promised to replace them. It turns out they're expensive. I won't repeat that mistake. Nothing stands the test of time in a relationship more than kindness. It can't be faked long term, and I'd say it the most important quality in a mate. Let the small stuff go and just be kind. Find a small selfless thing you can do as much as you can to make your partner feel special, even if you don't feel good yourself. It comes back at you in multiples. What happened to the bully in your class? He went to college, got into drugs, lost his scholarship, and got kicked out. Last I saw, he's working construction and is making duck faces on his profile picture on Facebook. He did an insane amount of maturing during college, including having to uproot his whole life to care for his family after his mom died suddenly. He reached out to me and others I know personally and directly addressed the bullying. He paid to go out to lunch, and he was incredibly honest, apologizing and talking about why what he did was wrong. He's now running a successful animal rescue organization with his long-term girlfriend, and I wish him nothing but happiness. Happy ending. He drove drunk, got in a wreck, and is now paralyzed from the waist down. He's still a bully, but now he's an online bully. The accident seems to have made him feel even more justified in being an asshole. What is denied by many people, but is actually real? Most people aren't playing the official Uno card game rules. You can't stack the +2 card on top of each other. Same for Monopoly and the rules people invent for the free parking. Monopoly is actually faster paced and better with the official rules. The CIA trafficked cocaine into America in the 70s to fund freedom fighters and stop communism to the South. They were responsible for the drug epidemic that destroyed our inner cities for decades, so it's not hard to start questioning other decisions. Even when this stuff gets revealed, if it happened a while ago, there's not much anybody can do. It's like with the Epstein stuff, corruption can be blatant, but what are we really going to do about it? You don't know how to fight unless you've been trained or have experience in fighting. Most people imagine themselves kicking ass, only to have reality smash them in the nose. A lot of people even injure themselves just trying to throw punches. What do you eat when you have no money? Buy dried beans and rice in bulk. Spend some money on some bulk spices that could last you years. Mix in some potatoes to change things up, since they can be cooked so many ways. Not always interesting food, but it gets the job done. Find a market that sells their older produce and baked goods on clearance for 50% off. It's like a fun mystery seeing what food you'll get for cheap. Oftentimes, it's only a day or two old, and will easily last weeks in a good fridge. Bread products freeze very well. It's so easy to never worry about moldy bread. Combine that with frozen vegetables and any cheap protein, like beans or eggs if there's no price spike like in recent times. If you're really struggling, find to a local food pantry or charity if you have something like that. That's what they are for. And when you are doing better financially, donate back to them to help the next person. Were you ever that one in a million? What's your story? I survived a plane crash. I was on an old Patu, famous for being very safe, on a tour of the desert in western China when I was like 7. My father's friend who piloted the plane didn't survive, but somehow I got out with a concussion. I was apparently unconscious for a day in the middle of the desert, in the wreckage of the crash, 50 kilometers from the town and airport. The people who found me were some people who plant trees in the desert to protect towns from sandstorms. They were on the way to pick up a shipment, and the only reason they found me was because they were making a bet on how fast an egg would cook in the sand and went off the road to test. For my 7th birthday, we went to Disneyland. They just happened to be doing a car giveaway when we were there. For my 7th birthday, Mickey Mouse gave me a Pontiac Firebird. What's the most hurtful thing someone has ever said to you? My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. My siblings and I shaved our heads to support her. This school kid told me that he hopes my mom dies and that I looked like I was in the Holocaust. She has been cancer-free for 13 years, but screw that kid. My mom would often say that she had to love me, but she didn't like me. I didn't realize how horrible that was until become a mother myself. I would never talk to my child like that. I took my math book up to the teacher's desk with a question. I wasn't understanding it. He slams my book on his desk and asked me if I was stupid or what. If I ever run into that asshole, I have a few things to show and tell him. A kid in my sister's class held a crumpled piece of paper to his head and said, "I look like your father." They were 10. Our dad had a brain tumor, which he died of. A year later, the same kid's dad hung himself at home. That's when he finally apologized.